Um, Now, in this shot here, I'm taking a couple of French movies, um, and here we can. I've got little numbers we have in the frame and everything that establishes, um, you know, basically a sense of depth. If we look at the highway sign here and the depth cues, which highlight the z-axis, we know that the pole on the right side is smaller than the sign on the left side. All right? And then varying sizes indicate the movement of the subject, the car within the frame. The camera is placed at a high angle, so you capture the car on an open highway to indicate the vastness and the unexpected nature of this car ride. Um, they're being chased by thugs. The high angle can also indicate the uncertainty and powerlessness of these people who are being chased. Now, the car is placed at one of the sweet spots according to the rule of thirds. You can see we've got a 3 there. This technique promotes the viewer to recognize the subject as the main focus of the shot. And then the use of the highway lines, the high camera angle and the deep frame emphasize the z-axis. By showcasing the lines of the z-axis, the viewer recognizes the lack of traffic in the shot. So if we go to another French movie, here this is a nice establishing shot, but it's a long shot here. The framing of the trees surrounding the action kind of work as visual cues to emphasize the z-axis and depth and draw the viewer's attention to the main action, the gunfight that's taking place in front of the house. Now the horizon line and the house are placed according to the rule of thirds, which further draw our attention into the scene. And the twig, are the top of the tree, functions in a multitude of ways. It separates the characters, the thugs versus the other guys, and it divides the house into thirds, and it's a depth cue to remind the viewer of the off-screen space. It's this open frame. The characters are very small in the frame, but are noticeable because of their dark clothes against the white snow, and we can almost hear their gunfire just by looking at it here. But the audience is distanced from the fight. We're not part of it. There's no cowboy shots here. So this use of the high angle emphasizes the kind of uneven, off-kilter sense of the scene, but basically you can see the z-axis really clearly. Now, when we think of the axis and depth, we do wide-angle shots. What I mean is, like, if we dominate something in the foreground, some person, and we blur a bit of the background, which is what's happening with the wide angle of 35 or 24. It's going to get us focused in the foreground, and you're going to blur out what's not going to see the background. But what happens is that blurriness adds to a sense of depth here. You can see in both close-ups here that it adds, it gives us depth, but it gives us focus on the main character. But we don't need to see the defined background. Here in Blade Runner, we have a good example of matching shots here that kind of go back and forth. It's Harrison Ford looks one way, and then he's responded here by her. Now look at when the backgrounds, the background is totally indistinguishable, but it adds something to have it a little lighter against our brown sense here. So we match our shots, we get a sense of depth, and what we're doing is he's cropping the head here. But that's give us the rule of thirds working out fine, and also diminishes her a little more in Harrison Ford's view. But it's your basic single shot, reverse shot, using wide angle focus to give us some depth, as we are in this shot here. So surrounded by people, he's in focus. Everybody else is not in focus, but that doesn't matter because they're just general run of humanity gives us a sense of depth in the picture. As Ricci does in this picture here, we focus on her, but in the background, the light on some murky figure, some scary little figure, it's great because we don't need to see that figure. We just need to feel that figure to give us a sense of depth. And in the Social Network here, this is a great shot. It's showing how using wide angle lens to get a little depth to frame the shot, we just, blur them out a little bit in the front, but to do it wrong, we blur too much, as you see in this shot. We've got him focused in the center of the screen, but if we blur it too much, it disturbs us. The blur upsets us. So we want to be able to do it so we can generally recognize the features, although not totally defined. And here's a shot from well, this is a shot of the side of a building, obviously, but this shot here is a good example of any kind of depth you want to look at here. This is basically Sam Worthington, I think. He's rented a hotel room and he's written a suicide note and he goes out in the window and he's like a little anxious there. We don't know what's going to happen, but we certainly are on the edge of our seat. One thing we can see, the building of the cars on the depth of the frame are total z-axis moment there, and it just shows you that if to use, this is how you use it in any action thriller. But on the other hand, if we go to a flat frame here and look at the Limitless, this is a flat frame with Bradley Cooper. He's cleaning out his house and he's redecorating. He's sitting on his couches and he's thinking about his total condition here. But we can understand at this point in the story, he's feeling totally depleted and trapped and nowhere to go. And it's a good example. You can just see by the lighting. The z-axis is just slammed against the wall. It's a very flat frame. But if we go to sunshine, a little bit of sunshine here, this is a great example of how the filmmakers use a technique to show the distance between characters in the frame by having Dwayne find out he's colorblind. He can't go to the Air Force, so he gets mad. He goes out of the car and he bitches and screams and runs down the hill. And his mother, Toni Collette, tries to make him feel better, but she's unable to do so. But you add depth to the composition because the relative size depth cue is very prominent here. The family way back up the hill, and she's looking over him, and the way it's spaced out in the rule of thirds and everything. He's prominent in the foreground. She's a little less prominent, and they're way less prominent, but it gives you a great sense of depth. And finally, another way of achieving depth is to have overlapping. If you have some object or if you have a shoulder in the shot, this overlapping conveys an immediate sense of depth here, as we see with this insert shot of the shoes. We got the chair and its wrought iron overlap, giving us a sense of depth. And same here in the Social Network, we've got the table where bottles and everything overlap to give us a sense of depth. And here's one of my favorites here. This is Marcel, the character Marcel in Tarantino's Pulp Fiction. And this shot here, this is a wide-angle shot. It's medium close-up, but we never see Willis, who's in the background of the shot. We never see his face ever come into focus. Instead, what's in focus is the back of Marcel's head. We never see Marcel's face. All we see is this weird band-aid on his neck. But because it is in the third that dominates our attention, and because it is in focus in this wide shot, we have depth, but we also have the foreground really troubling us. And it's a wonderful shot in the movie because you want to see his face, but you never do. So you're leaning into the shot. It's absolutely masterful shot. And here I'm talking about over-the-shoulder shots. DiCaprio here talking. We cut over this man's shoulder to get to DiCaprio, and in a sense he's a little out of focus, but that shot gives a sense of depth. It's because we're doing a single over the shoulder. And here if we want to play with the mirror and get a shot of depth, if we can't have it in the shot, we just put a mirror and add it in the shot. But here we have, again, a wonderful rule of thirds and a kind of almost a medium-long shot giving us depth. Here, another medium shot of another Tarantino flick, and putting our people in the foreground, framing the gentleman in the center, we have a nice sense of depth. But once again, I'm going back to Lincoln. Here, for that shot we want in our horror movie, that iconic depth shot. Again, think of the figure dominating the frame. Think of the lighting that's going to give us depth. And think of all those elements that will lend us a sense of drawing our eye beyond the focal point to the background point.